Hello, my name is Adah Parris, and I am an enthusiastic curator of people, patterns, and stories. Professionally, I wear many hats. Some would describe me as a futurist, technology futurist, and what that means is that, well, my approach to it is that I take a philosophical and anthropological approach to technology. So I look at how it impacts our sense of identity, our cultures and the stories that we tell, our economics and the impact that we have or want to have, and our measures of success, and also our ecosystems and our communities. And I believe that all four of those things are intertwined. I'm also a storyteller. And for me, the medium doesn't matter. So whether I am standing on stage and giving a talk, or I am co-producing a immersive experience or a show that may use tech, or I also have a side hustle as a milliner. But what I do is I make headdresses that represent people's personas, their personalities, their identities. And so it's helping people to tell their stories in a very visual way. So that also, I suppose, mixes in the idea of being an artist. And I think that all of us are artists in our own way. It's interesting because when I go to events and I'm asked, what title would I want to put down, I always try and work out who's the audience first, and which version or what story is it that they want. And I think that a lot of us are like that, more and more of us are like that. We are multifaceted, and we're working out ways to bring those different elements of ourselves together. And I think it's not just us working out ways. I think society is more ready to have multi-layered, multifaceted people. And I, for one, am very pleased about that. But I think what brings all of those things together is that I recognize patterns in different worlds, and I can speak those different languages, or I have an understanding. So whether it's tech or spirituality or education or advertising, and then I'm able to bring those different ideas together in a language that is inclusive. And the common theme for everything that I do is about human potential. My main problem with the current system is that I think it's become, I think that's probably it, that it is called a system and not an ecosystem. That it's very, it feels that it's become an external extension to who we are, and there's a separation between us and it, and that a lot of it doesn't really reflect or the way that it's set up and has been run by whether we call them leaders or whoever, the loudest voices, doesn't necessarily reflect the wants and needs and the desires of the majority necessarily. And the current systems that we have, especially here, I think do not reflect, back to my point about describing what I do and who I am. They're not really about human potential. It seems to be that they are, their main focus is about keeping people on the hamster wheel, keep the hamster wheel turning, keep the competition going, and I'm not just talking competition in this country, but big global competition. And it feels like it's a constant game of chicken where nobody wants to step off that hamster wheel, or that, nobody wants to step off, and nobody wants to be that person that is the first crazy dancer or the first person to say, no, we're going to do something different and fundamentally change that. Well, do I say nobody? There are, but I think that more could be done. And so my frustration is that when we start to look at the systems, especially here, the thing that comes to mind for me is this idea of Okay, so if I wear my tech hat for a moment, people talk about we're in the fourth industrial revolution, which is the merging of the on and offline worlds, and the fifth industrial revolution, which is where we're using technology to augment our intelligence. But we're also in the Anthropocene, which is an era where we understand the impact that we have, as humans, have had on the world and the planet. And I think that we're actually at the intersection of all of those. And that is where we start to question, what does it mean to be human? And what are our responsibilities and ethics and morals and the power of all of that. And it's also about value. What do we value, and who has determined what that value is and how that's measured? And I think that's what's wrong with the current system, that it feels very top down, more and more so, rather than bottom up. But I think it ties in with some of the stuff that I've said already, that we need to redefine what value is. And I think that, well, what I see is that a lot of our response, the second wave of responses to the coronavirus has brought a lot of that to life. So the first response to the virus, I feel, was very privileged. It was, there's almost handbrake stop of, right, everybody needs to stop working, everybody needs to stop moving. And in order to be able to do that, you have to have a certain measure of life and what have you. And so that in itself is very privileged. But what I've also seen now, as I called it in the second wave, is that the rise of the hyper-local communities that are really supporting people. And what I mean by that is it's not a rise, it's a resurgence, because we've had them. This is nothing new. I think that we have become a nation, a species to a certain extent, of perfecting the art of busyness and focus on our own needs, our own individual needs. And these hyper-local communities, what's happening now is that they're going back to almost what Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What are the most basic things that people need to survive, and how can we help? And those responses are not linked to your educational attainment, or how much money you've got in the bank, or your gender, or your sexual orientation, or your ability, a race, or anything like that. It's back to basic human needs. So I'm, for one, am really pleased, really, grateful to see that. And my work is also part of that, is looking at how do we, some said upend innovation. To me, innovation is problem solving, and we're all problem solvers. As humans, we're all problem solvers. And I don't think that should be left to one person or specific individuals. And so what I'm doing is creating structures, frameworks, and events and gatherings and places where the ideas, we can do problem solving together. We're getting people who are at the very root of that, who are living those things on a day-to-day basis. They're the best problem solvers, because they are the ones who have been living it day to day, who will work out their own shortcuts for doing things because certain elements of the system aren't working for them, and their voices are not being listened to, they're not being heard, and so they just, bypass things and, will create their own ways of doing things. And that, to me, is innovation. And so what I'm trying to do is create structures where we harness that collective intelligence, but harness that collective intelligence for the good of all, not just for the good of the few. So that is my goal, that's my ambition, and I see that as redefining, in a way that's helping to redefine or restructure kinship and community, because it shouldn't be community that's based on ability to pay or educational attainment. We're all human, and so there should be these different ways of bringing that trust and transparency together to solve problems for all of us.